So I want to start off by asking you, what drew you to the project? Like, what made Alex Rider your guy?
Lots of things, I think. I've got two kids who are just the right age for the books. They loved the stories, so there was a kind of obvious pull there. And also, to be honest, it's exciting to do something like this, which is kind of fresh and contemporary. A lot of the stuff I've done in the past has been historical fiction. This was quite different, and aimed at quite a different audience as well. So lots about it that was just exciting.
That's actually something I wanted to touch on because this is a 20-year-old book series. And I read the book series when I was a kid. And I remember, it was contemporary to that time. And technology has come so far since then. And adaptations can be so tricky in that way. So, can you talk a little bit about how you approached the balance between capturing the spirit of this character, but also updating it for our times?
Yeah, I think we were all conscious going in that it needed to be brought up to date. We've got nice little moments in season one where Alex uses Find My Phone in order to trace what's happened to his uncle's car, that sort of thing, which I think is what a contemporary teen would go to immediately. And and I was very keen also that we kind of move away from the slightly James Bondy world of gadgets and into a world where Alex is kind of having to think on his feet, whether the gadgets are in his head and it's the training that his uncle has given him that allows him to solve situations. So it was updating it both to be slightly more Jason Bourne than James Bond, and also very much more to be a teenager of today's world rather than the world of 20 years ago.
Now, speaking of adaptations, this is actually the second book in the series because it
Yeah.
starts with Stormbreaker. What led to that decision to go with Point Blank first?
Stormbreaker was a film some while back. There was a film made of it, and I think everybody involved felt that's been done. Let's start with something completely new. Kind of put that to one side, and admittedly, in this season, we do get Alex's backstory. We do find out that his uncle dies, and then the sort of investigation into that is Alex's way into a world that he hasn't suspected. So we kind of borrowed that from Stormbreaker, but to me, Point Blank has this wonderfully eerie kind of closed school in the Alps, and that's just a fantastic place to go to and to explore. So I was really excited to do this one.
Actually, I'm going to jump off of that for my next
Mm.
point because a series is only as strong as its villains. And we we got some really good, creepy, eerie villains, like you mentioned, and almost unfortunately timely. So, can you talk a little bit about developing those characters for the screen, how you went about casting them? Tell me all about the villains.
Well, we've got obviously our two. We have several. You're right. Goodness, because there's the real bad guy who's in the shadows for the first half of the season, and that's Dr. Greif, and he has a kind of really dangerous plan involving kind of a Midwich Cuckoo's body swap scheme to take over the world's key families. And he's played brilliantly by Haluk Bilginer, who I loved in this role. I mean, he just brought that to life. Greif's sidekick is this woman called Eva Stellenbosch, who is supposed to be the kind of front-facing part of the school. She goes out and meets parents and does all the kind of PR, as it were. In the book, she's described very differently. She's a kind of ex-Soviet bodybuilder, and she intimidates Alex by bending a poker in half in front of him. And I was excited. I was more excited by the idea that she should be intellectually and psychologically frightening rather than physically frightening. So we went a different way with her, and I think she comes across as really spooky by the time she's on the screen. She's compelling. And then finally, of course, we've got Yasen Grigorovich, who is this very shadowy assassin figure who's working for Greif, but to some extent you get the feeling that Greif is actually perhaps slightly scared of him. And there's a very twisted path there between Yasin and Alex, they only meet for a tiny fraction of a moment in season one, but their stories are very intertwined. And I'm in the middle of season two at the moment, and without getting any spoilers up on the screen, Yasin continues to play a part in Alex's life.
So Alex is really our anchor here. We see him travel and interact with so many different characters. So I'm wondering, as you were developing Alex as a character, was there any part of him that you related to, and what was that? Like, which aspect of his character did you relate to the most?
He's quite different to me in a lot of ways. He's far sportier than I am. There is a brilliant scene where he snowboards down the mountain on an ironing board. I wouldn't have got 3 feet. That would have been it. And the guards would have got me, and that would have been the end of the show. But I tried to feed in my memories of the sort of awkwardness and vulnerability of being a teenager so that he's not just capable. Because that's really dull. You want him to be trying to do ordinary things and slightly failing. And he's got this wonderful best mate who's his kind of wingman and backs him up to the hilt in Tom. But they're both of them not quite okay around the girls they fancy, and they're trying their best, but it's a bit like this. And I love that. I loved writing all of that. I love the sense that Alex is an ordinary kid who doesn't realize that he's been trained his whole life also to be an exemplary secret agent. That's kind of happened in the background and he's not aware of it. So I think what I liked about him most and what I wanted to emphasize the most was this vulnerability that comes of him being young, reluctant to be in this world and kind of bullied and strong-armed into it.
Let's talk about Tom and also Jack, because they both of them are so different from what we get in the books. So tell me a little bit about how, like, what that creative freedom allowed you to do with them, because I believe Tom only was in it for like a couple pages or something like that.
Barely in the book at all. But I had, of course, read all of the books that Anthony had written at that point. And I loved Tom, and I thought, no, Tom's got to be there. Tom's got to be kind of involved in this story because Alex needs someone to talk to. He needs a best mate that he can, bounce ideas off and who can say in return to him, look, the guys who are telling you that you need to work for them are not your friends. They're like the enemy, man. They're the government, and you need to trust me and Jack, not them. You can't trust them because they're using you. And that was really interesting, that dynamic of Tom being obviously not a spy, not an agent, not in Alex's world, but at the same time, he roots Alex to a family, and there's this kind of surrogate family that clumps around Alex once his uncle is gone, which is Jack at home and Tom at school. And they've got his back. They're looking out for him in a way that nobody else is.
So another thing that I loved about this particular adaptation was that Point Blanc was not an all boys school. Like, we got a mix of different different types of characters. We get a very interesting foil in Kyra. Uh, how did you come about, like, how did you develop all of these different personalities? What led to that decision? Maybe who's your favorite student at the school? Tell me about Point Blank.
Okay. Well, that was really interesting because obviously we wanted to broaden this out. Kyra is a character who's new. She's not in the books. She's my invention. And it was really important to me that we get a female character to balance Alex. And also to make the most of the female characters who are part of the story. So Mrs. Jones in the department and Jack get quite sort of important, sustained roles throughout the series, which I liked writing. I mean, I've written in the past shows like The Bletchley Circle, which were for just ensemble female casts. So that I have form in this regard. I would have to say Kyra's my favorite out of the kids at the school. But having said that, James, who's the kind of Australian guy, he's just brilliant. And he became so much more anarchic and so much more fun than I had kind of anticipated. The more we wrote him, and it kind of snowballed. He's great as well. But Kyra's a slow burn kind of girl with the dragon tattoo kind of character.
Oh, that's a good comparison. I hadn't even thought of that, but now that you say it, I can see it.
I had it very firmly in my head because she's a hacker and she has that kind of background in technology. So I was thinking along those lines of it.
So, what is one thing you are just so excited for people to see if you could narrow it down?
Like a scene, are we talking about?
It could be any element of the show that you're excited for people to see.
There are two bits that stand out for me. In episode 2, I think it is, Alex gets kidnapped and interrogated by people we don't know who they are, and it becomes really quite tense. I think it's a sequence that we argued a lot or talked a lot about in the production office, because how far can we take this? Can we make it as intense as I wanted to make it? And I'm really proud of it. I think it's the moment that defines Alex, because he is under intense pressure and he gets out of it. And then it turns out that that's not quite what it has seemed to be. Later on in the show, we have a similar situation of incredible tension and kind of pressure on Alex at Point Blanc. Only this time it's for real, and if he slips up, he's dead. And at that point, he ends up breaking out and escaping with what he can find, which is when he gets down the mountainside on a snowboard. It's a sequence in the book that we knew we had to kind of ring fence and preserve. That we have to have. And it was great fun to write, but the way it was shot and the way that it gets played is just fantastic.
So, once season one is all out and everybody gets a chance to see it, what do you hope people take away from it?
Um, the thing I like about the show is that it's a young person thrown into an adult world who is solving problems and trying to make things better. And okay, this is an entertainment show about secret agents, but that, I think, it's also a theme for our times. If anybody's going to sort out our world, it's going to be young people right now. So go, Alex.
All right. And this is the last note that I'm going to wrap up on, so you can move on to your next. But and I'm pretty sure that I know the answer to this question, having seen the whole all of season one, but I'd like to hear it from you. Do you have more plans for Alex Rider?
Oh gosh, yeah. We're doing very well on season 2 right now. Scripts are being shuttled off to the production office, and we're planning to shoot early next year. So yes.
All right, that's very exciting to hear. Thank you so much for your time. That is all, like I said, all I have for you. But
No
good luck
problem.
with the rest of your launch.
Thank you very much indeed.